respondents. When I first created this slide a couple of days ago, we had only 20-some. But I think maybe even today, we had some people that submitted their responses. And so I was able to go in and recreate this word cloud. It's very easy if you've never done it before. There's websites that will allow you to do it. So you just enter in the bigger the word, the more frequently that word was used in responses. So you can compare Barna's data to Zion, and you'll see that there's a lot of similarities. Comfortable sticks out, right? Caring, faithful, spiritual, loving. You see loving kind of almost in the same place on both of them. But they're not all warm and fuzzy words either, right? There are things like chaotic and messy, lonely, crowded, stressful, secretive, tense. So not every household is rainbows and unicorns. And that's true for our household as well. Despite all the fun stories we might share, the anecdotes that we have definitely stress, and there are times within our household that are troubling as well. So, one thing I would like you to do is to now circle up again around your table and take a look at the questions that are on your study guide. Today's going to be discussion heavy within your groups. So what I want you to do is spend about, let's see here, we'll go till about 10 till, so about 7-8 minutes, discussing the questions on your sheet under home atmosphere. And we're going to pull it back together again and kind of wrap up this idea of home atmosphere and talk about how important it is.
Know Tim, but he is organized and a perfectionist, and he's a former teacher. So one of you take the lead. You're on break. Wow.
Yes. I'm just reminded, I forgot my organization went out the window.
We're kind of the things that people saw in the home when they walked in. They would talk about their wallet process. Whereas I know I have a lot of biblical things to where my kids said we don't have definitions anymore that says words on it. There's a lot of things taken in my walls have changed over the years from a lot of meaningful Bible verses and things like that. So I was thinking about that. Like, I am so common now in my life to artwork as well.
Out of town guests weekends ago, seminary, and they were, first time in our home, and they're commenting on a cross we have in the den. Oh, we got that at the science school, and then we have a tray on the dining room table. Oh, we got that at the science school. And there's a frame up above the fireplace. Oh, we got that at the science school auction, and then the majority of the things Mr. Trankline had made, so we also were covering. So I guess science school auction focal points here. This is my wife teaches.
What grade?
She teaches 3 all day. She's surviving. I always say I don't know a specific student's name.
Very nice.
So you need to come
so much time taking a look at the atmosphere of our homes. Well, the atmosphere of our homes is very, very important because we spend so much time there. I think when we talk about spiritual development and discipleship, we think of things like going to church, going to Bible class, maybe Bible study, devotions. But that takes up a very small fraction of our day-to-day operation in what we do. And most of our time is spent outside of school and outside of work is spent in the home and just doing ordinary, mundane things. And we're going to kind of really focus on that word here of mundane, that spiritual development, discipleship occurs amongst things that are just mundane. Our atmosphere is very, very important in our home, though, because what it does is it dictates our values and our priorities and how we live out our day-to-day life. There's a quote that I really like that's in the book, that I just pulled from the book, which says, "The crucible of our formation is in the anonymous monotony of our daily routines." A lot of big words in there. The crucible of our formation is in the anonymous monotony of our daily routines. So that's really is what is forming us in all these things that we take for granted in our day-to-day lives of going to the grocery store, vacuuming the living room, whatever it might be. It's those things that help develop who we are and our spiritual life. Barna shares that there are 23 different activities that correspond to spiritually vibrant homes. One thing that they make clear is that just because you have these activities doesn't mean you're a spiritually vibrant home. And just because you're a spiritually vibrant home doesn't mean you automatically have all of these activities. It's not that kind of a correlation, but what they have found is that spiritually vibrant homes happen to also have many of these activities. And there's a list, I can't remember what page it's on, but it's in your book. It's a nice diagram. You want to try to find that? 24? And it talks about all the different activities that they found where are taking place in spiritually vibrant homes. 24. And some of the ones I just listed up here, I mean, playing games together, going to the park, holding household meetings, which we never held household meetings in our house. I don't know if the rest of you experienced that or not. Growing up, we never, of course, Mom and Dad, I don't think we ever had household meetings. Do you remember any household meetings? But it's something that they found to be in many of these homes. Taking walks together, singing together, working together, serving together. Everybody see the common thread? Together. Together. And doing things together. I think it's interesting as Jesus comes to us. He comes to us in the mundane. And there are many, many examples of this throughout Scripture. Well, first of all, one I didn't even note on here is how he came into this world, right? He was born into a stable, or in a stable, laid in a feeding trough, born to very ordinary parents, a carpenter, and just very mundane in Jesus' life. So he became, tradition has it, a carpenter, and followed after his father's footsteps in that. Again, a mundane kind of occupation. We look at his ministry and the many mundane things that occurred throughout his ministry. Washing his disciples' feet. I thought this one was interesting. Sleeping in a boat. He slept in a boat, had his head on a pillow. Right? Nothing fancy. Just Mundane, he was with his disciples in a boat. They were fishing. Using mud to heal the blind. Turning water into wine. Using the simple things of fish and bread to feed thousands. And just looking at all of his parables, we can see how the mundane types of ordinary physical items are used throughout his ministry. And so they share with us, don't underestimate the significance and the impact of the ordinary and the mundane activities that occur within your life. So next, what I would like you to do is to go back together in your groups and talk about the significance of the mundane in your households. Taking a look at those activities and which ones maybe have you taken for granted that maybe you should give a second look at. Those mundane activities that might help develop that spiritual discipleship within your household. Okay, go back together for a few minutes.
24 is here.
Takes younger eyes.
Probably not the youngest eyes, but that's one thing I've noticed in the last 6 months that they're not as good as they used to be. Like meetings daily, household meetings, we share how we're fitting in with each other daily. We go on walks monthly, we go to the park monthly. Household member talks to me about household member talks to me about household member teaches me about household member encourages me to go to church. Household member sets an example. Close friend visits on a regular basis. I have deep conversations with close friends. I personally pray to God and talk to me. I personally attended a religious small group of Bible studies. I personally read from the Bible in the family. I already know I already know to get outside the house, to get outside the house and finance. I have close friends in my life who feel like they have families. I have close friends who understand I put down the taking walks and playing games. Some of you guys already know the kids and I just keep them down. Communication is good. Got it back fairly deep in there, and they sold it along for Walmart. I wanted to like round trip. I think so far last week. What's that? Shop light. Yeah. Just, I mean, I'm 43. I'm not young, but I'm not old by any means. I look at walking down the house. That's what I'm seeing them out there, and they've got a dog. And that's why they got the dog. The dog is 3. So we need to find a track and stuff like that. We've been there for 7.5 years, and go on full time. Yeah. But it keeps people up. I doubt you're going 7 miles.
like gathering via Zoom instead of FaceTime. Do that on a fairly regular basis. And then we keep in contact. You know, all the sermons about that was a children's message about letter writing. Because I'm a big, I'll send cards and letters, but we're very big on, we have a family text stream, and so probably some of those traditional things on the list, but still, yes, and I will only take
at school I say, hear ye, in class yell, all men hear me, but I don't know if it's going to work here.
I know they were. And my youngest is trying to get a part.
So, I think what's interesting is when you actually sit down and think about those mundane activities, did you see where there could be some spiritual significance in them that maybe you hadn't before? I know I was sharing with Marie that sometimes in the mundane work with my kids is when I could have the more interesting conversations. Maybe uncomfortable conversations are made a little less uncomfortable when you're just driving in the car and you don't have to look at each other, or you're cleaning up the kitchen and you can kind of mention things that because you're kind of doing something else, it's not as we're going to sit down and have this serious talk. But also, one of the things I was also thinking is, in those mundane activities that I want my kids to see me do, am I always complaining about doing the mundane things? Like cleaning the house, vacuuming? Unfortunately, the answer is yes, I do. And I think I probably should. I should be more joyful and happy in doing those things, because in the mundane is where life is happening. I guess I am kind of a complainer. So, does anyone want to share something that they, talking in their group, maybe that spurred an idea in their head about something mundane? Even now, when we don't have kids in our household, the mundane things are things that we can do, share together. Yes?
One of the thoughts I had, you said you were complaining, but I also feel like we're human beings and our kids see that we're good Christians, but yes, we complain sometimes about stuff, but we still do it because we know we need okay. I'm not used to this. I think just because you're complaining about it, but you still do it, you're still serving your family even though you don't like it, I don't think that's necessarily a bad image to give somebody. And I think that it also teaches them that we're imperfect, but yet we're still Christians trying to do more. So I think that is a good thing, and I don't necessarily think that's a horrible example. Okay.
You don't know how much I complain. And those people are laughing, are like, yeah, she does.
She does.
Think about the blessing of having shelter. Not having shelter.
That's true.
Okay, moving along here. We always run out of time. That's okay. There's 3 biblical themes that the book talks about, and the importance of household and atmosphere. The first one is that God sees our households. Did anybody notice in our, was it the epistle reading? Philemon. Did anybody notice the words there? Does anybody have their bulletin out? We're gonna be the spoiler for you. Martha, could you read for us? Is it Philemon, the first two lines, 2 sentences?
Paul, a prisoner for Christ Jesus, and Timothy, our brother, to Philemon, our beloved fellow worker, and Apphia, our sister, and Archippus, our fellow soldier, and the church in your house.
Stop.
people.
What was the last line?
And the church in your house.
And the church in your house. How often, so, did anybody catch that? So how often do we read scripture and they mention house or household and we pass right over it? The book talks about how our Western thought always has us thinking individually. And so often within the Bible, things are a group or family, can't say that word, family. A household. The book uses the example of Joseph and his brothers and them coming to Egypt. And so in our minds we think of 11 brothers coming to Egypt. And it was really their whole entire households that came. So it was probably many, many, many more people that were coming. And so households is something that's really, really important. We've passed out some passages for you to look up. If you could quickly take a look at those. We're going to hit on a couple of those in our last 6 minutes here. The first one, Exodus 1, 1 to 5. Who has that?
These are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob, each with his household: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. All the descendants of Jacob were 70 persons. Joseph was already in Egypt.
So there we go. 2 Samuel 6:11.
And the ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom and the Gittite 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household.
Again, and all his household. And how about Numbers 18:31? Do we not have that one? Oh.
Is it 16 or 18 that you want us to read?
1831.
18 on the paper. Oh, there's two different. Never mind. We're 16 when you get there, sorry.
Does anybody have Numbers 18?
You and your households may eat the rest of it anywhere, for it is your wages for your work at the tent of meeting.
Okay. So, households are very important to God. Let's go down to number 2. Households often rise and fall together. Who has Proverbs 31, 15, and 21?
She gets up when it's still dark. She provides food for her family and provisions for her servant girls. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet.
Number 16.
And as soon as he had finished speaking all these words, the ground under them split apart, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up, with their households and all the people who belonged to Korah and all their beds.
So there's the fall. And Proverbs 15.
The greedy bring ruin to their households, but the one who hates bribes will live.
Again, another fall. So, households rise and fall together. We see that oftentimes in Scripture where one person rises or falls, and it also involves their household within that. That's right. No, that's right. So this is a quote from page 49. My faith and faithfulness is not just my own. It affects everyone in my household. So for us to consider that I think so often, again, as Western American Christians, we often feel like it's about me and my faith. I just have to be worried about my spirituality and my faith. But you consider how much your faith affects your entire household, in that it's not just your own, but it is your household as well, in that your household relies upon, depends upon, and their faith is something that depends upon your own faith. 77% of Christian households share the faith with the members of their household. I don't know. Do you think that's something, is that a shocker to you? Is that surprising to you? Or does that sound about right? So about 3/4 of Christian households share their faith with members of their household. I honestly thought it would have been higher. 68%, we mentioned this in here before, but mothers, you have such an impact on the faith life of your spiritual household. 68% of mothers are reported to have the greatest impact, 46%, sorry dads, not quite as much as the moms, but yet still significant. And grandparents, 37%, that is significant. I think there's a tendency for grandparents to feel like, I'm not the parents of my grandkids, I don't have that much influence, but you do. You have a lot of influence on the spiritual life of your family and your grandchildren. And the third theme is God works through households. We're running out of time here. Let's just take one. Genesis 7:1.
Then the Lord said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation."
And we're all familiar with that story, that God uses Noah's household and doesn't just take Noah and his wife into the ark, it takes the whole entire household into the ark as well. And the last thing, the early Christian church was often referred to as a household. And we see that in both Galatians and Ephesians there. The last slide here that I want to share with you, and this is just to kind of whet your appetite for next week. And next week we're really going to dive into, all right, what makes a vibrant, spiritually vibrant household? Of the 2,000 plus households that Barna surveyed, they divided them up into 4 different categories. And they're really dependent upon 2 things. One is the spiritual discipline that takes place within the house. So reading the Bible together, doing devotions together, praying together, going to church together. That's spiritual discipleship and discipline. The other is hospitality. How hospitable are you? Do you bring people into your houses and homes on a frequent basis? Those that basically accomplished both were categorized as being the spiritually vibrant household. So talk about God and faith, pray together, and also welcome non-family guests in. Those are considered vibrant, and 25%, so a quarter of the people that were surveyed fall into that category. Then there's the devotional. The devotional are those that talk about God, do all the spiritual discipleship stuff in their home, but maybe they don't invite guests into their home very frequently. And so those are considered devotional. That's 33%, so a little bit more than a fourth. Then we have hospitable. As you can probably imagine, those are ones that do bring guests into their home, but they're ones that aren't likely to be doing devotions and Bible study and praying together, those spiritual things within their home. And that's 14%. And then the last part, the 28%, is considered the dormant. They're not doing either of them. They're not doing the spiritually active discipline pieces, and they're not doing the welcoming in of guests. And that is 28%, which is a significant amount. So, as we move into next week, you can already start to kind of think about, where do I fall in that category? Where would I be? So next week, again, we will hit a little bit harder, the spiritually vibrant home, and looking at characteristics of that and what we can do within our homes to become spiritually vibrant. Amy's going to close us out with prayer, and have a blessed week.
Dear Father, creator of our household of faith, thank you for bringing us together as a household to spend time around your word and to learn more about what you want us to do. Please bless us this week and help us find ways to share our faith and love of you with our household. In your name we pray. Amen.